When people are asked about biggest fear in their life, fear of public speaking and formal presentation is ranked among one of the highest. It ranks higher than fear of spiders, fear of snakes, fear of heights, and for 70% of people it ranks higher than fear of death. But don't think that being on the other side of the room is any more comfortable, because when polled about presentations, especially those that feature PowerPoint, people say that they would rather go to a dentist. 20% of them, they'd rather go to a dentist. 21% they say they'd rather do taxes. 18% would rather go to work on a Saturday than sit through a PowerPoint presentation. You've all seen this guy before. This guy who's so fearful out of his mind that he ended up putting entire presentations on a slide up here, so in case that he freaks out, he can always revert back to the slide and read, even though he spent his entire life in this town that he wants to tell you about, and can tell probably nice stories about. He reverts to this sort of fact-sharing type of a presentation. So this is me just 5 years ago. Used to do a lot of presentations of this kind in which I would rely on a PowerPoint as a crutch that would sort of literally repeat what I was about to say. So what I would like to do today is to sort of challenge this notion of what PowerPoints are, the way they be, and kind of try to broaden that to understanding of what visual presentations are. They're not necessarily just PowerPoint presentations, but to think about what they are, especially in relation to this idea that we've developed about PowerPoint and what we do when we do our and a conventional understanding of PowerPoint. If I'm to kind of collect common use and abuse of PowerPoint, you come to something like this. What we end up doing in a PowerPoint, we tend to dump a whole lot of data through bullet points. So my goal today is to change this simple definition from what it is out here into something more conducive to visual medium, because whether you like it or not, this medium that we are working in right now is a different medium in a way that radio was different from television, in a way speaking is different from writing. So what we have here is confluence of visual and oral media that are coming together. And because of that, requires a certain set of rules. But I will do something rather simple today. I'm going to try to change these 4 or 5 words up here into something more conducive to visual presentation. So bear with me. Let's start with this idea of dumping. So what do we do when we're given 15 minutes to tell people something? Well, we tend to dump a whole lot of information on them. We conceive of this as a linear experience in which I am sharing something in one direction. I'm literally putting it on you, not really interested in the feedback. So as a scholar of communication, what a better word to use here would be to try to improve this into a communication. And even better if you can actually improve it to enhance that slightly a little bit, because what I'm seeing, what I'm getting back right now is a lot of nonverbals. That to me resembles even of a conversation. But some of the best speakers, what they do when they achieve real perfection in presenting, they actually are engaging in performance. So a successful PowerPoint presentation resembles much more an actor delivering a monologue than reading of a physical paper copy. The second thing that we often do when given a chance to present, we tend to present a lot of data, a lot of straight up information. And why is this type of medium not necessarily the most conducive to presenting of data? If you prefer data, there are better ways. Google delivers data really, really nicely. But what we would try to do to improve on this is to add pieces of data so they relate to one another, so we can get some kind of information. And even better, if you can combine all of this, if you can process data, put them in some kind of relation, you can actually deliver knowledge which is way, way better and more complex type of information and data in some kind of organized fashion. But even this is not enough. It's not about just delivering performance of knowledge. Most of us are not moved, and when we are asked to contribute to charity, we don't necessarily just reply to it cognitively. What we do in a situation like this, we are moved by new knowledge and new information, but we're moved by something else. And that is, as you might expect, is emotion as well. What I'm telling you here is nothing different. This dates back to the 4th century in Aristotle in Pathos, Logos, and Ethos. Moving on, we can look at now one of the most offensive ones, most offensive parts of the PowerPoints that often are actually thought of as bullet points. Bullets are really not good for much, because bullet is the least organized principle of information gathering. It is literally a list that doesn't have any kind of order. In this day and age in which we're faced with a number of different images, with a number of different video and audio material, use of bullets is really redundant. So instead of bullets, you might expect better things to do and use in terms of visual performance and visual presentations are pictures. I would definitely go with graphs. But what I do not mean, and when I often say this to the students, they tend to think that I'm expecting them to show me a slideshow, and that is not what is being suggested here. Instead, as you can see, I'm using a whole lot of words. I'm not suggesting that the words should not be used in a PowerPoint, but it is very carefully crafted words, something that you would do in a very sort of orchestrated kind of way that you would process into something that resembles most likely the tweet. 140 character compressed thinking that suggests a point. So it is not necessarily about showing a slideshow of pictures and graphs. It is about complementing those with additional highlights, main points, words that highlight your main structures, your main points, and your main arguments. When combine these things, we talk about them as visuals. So we would try to give a performance of emotion and knowledge through visuals, and then points, to tell stories through points is an okay thing to do. When we tell stories in this kind of medium, to have 1, 2, and 3 is a good organizational principle of delivering any kind of oral presentation. But what's happening here right now is a live speaker using visual aids. And there are improvements in delivering stories. We might strive for other things that have organization and are a bit more conducive to that kind of new media that we're using. So what I would suggest, instead of points, 1, 2, 3, use narratives. And different kind of narratives. And narration, number of different types of narration. You can strive with what we know works in a classical narrative, to use the classical narrative that every single Hollywood movie is organized in, and a 3-act structure type of a setup. So if we could, just for a second, understand that what happened here is that we abandoned the traditional understanding of PowerPoint as a dumping of data through bullet points, and embrace 5 new concepts, only 5 new concepts, that then can be summed up as a performance of emotion and knowledge through visual and narration. That would be a huge improvement.